Good morning, fellow humans. And I spell that Huemonds, colorful nuts, because that's how we should think of ourselves, not as like filthy rags or sin-natured people. We're colorful nuts. We're bouncing off the walls, trying to make the most of it. We're not bad. We're not sinful. We're just humans, colorful nuts. Let's give ourselves a break. Okay, well, today is Sunday, September 14th, 2025. Wow. The month is literally almost half over. So that means it's not half over. Okay. Sunday, Choich Day. If you can't go to Choich, watch it on YouTube. Don't just do the spiritual thing. But before we digress or dive into that, let's just get the stuff out of the way. So it's Sunday, G.school Day. This is day 7 in week 1 of our neuroscience-oriented approach to success. Okay. Day 7 of week 1. It's the end of week 1. Overview and orientation is almost over. Tomorrow we start with Inside My School-Sized Kingdom. And then the following week is Outside My School-Sized Kingdom. What's outside my school-sized kingdom? And then week 4 is Leadership. Or if we're doing our boat metaphor, week 1 is Planning the voyage and its plans. Week 2, Building the ship. Week 3, Getting the crew. Week 4, the game is afoot. We're out there. So next week we're going to focus on the brain, but today we're going to finish up overview and orientation. And our simple goal is, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's simple. Our simple goal is to understand, who am I and why do I behave the way I do from a neuroscience perspective, not from a home, not from a religious, not from a psychological, not from a sociological, not from a philosophical, but just from a nuts and bolts. What is it that makes me me? And if I know that, figure out why do I do what I do? And my goal is to be able to dial in who I need to be right now. Always be able to dial in, not have someone else pulling my strings, pushing my buttons, etc. To be fully in control of who I am. Boom. That's it. Okay, not too shabby. Right? Okay. Now, our theme of today is take acting classes because, there should be because, ... Take acting classes because there's no longer any excuse for certain things. But before we get to that, advice from an 80-year-old, become someone's hero. Become someone's hero. And that could be your grandchild. Don't try to be your children's hero. That will not be good. That will stifle them. Probably stifle them. Don't try to become the hero to your kids. Try to become the hero to your grandchildren or somebody out there who's in need. Rescue them. That's what heroes do, right? Rescue them, help them, save them, get them back on their feet, wind them up, point them in the direction, give them a helping hand, pull them along, be by their side, hand over your shoulder, something. One size fits one. Or as they say about the Jesuits, if you've seen one Jesuit, or if you've met one Jesuit, you've met one Jesuit. Okay, what else we got on our hit parade? Let's see. The TED Talk for today is Amy Cuddy. That's a big one. I could do an hour on that. Body language, Seth Godin. Let's see what Seth Godin has to say. Often give in. I thought we were supposed to never give in. In an oft-quoted speech, Winston Churchill said, never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to an apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. The problem with this advice is that it means we spend an enormous amount of time in senseless battles with senseless folks who are also following this advice. In a community, perhaps, it makes more sense to only have battles about honor and glory and good sense, about honor and good sense, and everything else, sure, give in. It'll help you focus on what really matters. So Seth is flipping it over. So he's saying give in. No, only have battles about honor and good sense. Winston Churchill saying never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. So both can be right, both can be wrong. When it is I think the key is Seth Godin is saying in a community, Winston Churchill's talking about the enemy. Never give in to an enemy. Anyway, something worth pondering. All right, Amy Cuddy. This was, and perhaps still is, the #1 watched TED Talk of all time. It still could be the #1 watched TED Talk of all time because when this came out back in 2012, 13 years ago, they didn't have a lot of TED Talks coming out. Now there are scores of TED Talks coming out every day. So it's hard to climb your way to the top now because people have so many things they can be watching. This simply, okay, who is Amy Cuddy? Amy Cuddy is a Harvard Business School professor who noticed in class that the men were more out there, big, and the women, especially if they're Asian women, were more subdued, more quiet. And the problem with that is at Harvard, a third of the grade is based upon participation. So guys who are big and bold and boisterous, they would get generally higher scores than women, especially who would not participate. So she decided to investigate that. Is there a neuroscience, a hormonal or neurotransmitter basis to it? Because what we know, we can tell, we see somebody and we see their body language, and that tells us about them. We also know that our body language tells other people about how we feel. So Amy Cuddy's investigation was, does our body language tell ourselves something about us? And so she did an experiment that ultimately ended with her deciding if you do certain things, like you make yourself large for a period of a few minutes, you will release more testosterone. You'll have more confidence. If you do things like this for 5 minutes, or you will release more cortisol, and that will affect your behavior as well. So if you're going in for a job interview, you don't want a lot of cortisol because you show a lack of confidence. You appear to have a lack of confidence. Whereas if you have testosterone and have the appearance of more confidence, you'll do better in the interview. So that was what her testing was about. And she concluded that yes, our body language does say something to us, to ourselves. And we should thus know that and then use it to dial in who we need to be. If you're going to go in for a job interview, go in the bathroom, stretch out large for a few minutes. If you probably, she didn't say this, but my hunch would be if you are the kind of person who gets provoked easily, maybe go in and practice being small. Hold your neck, your shoulders for a period of time, and that will release cortisol, which will kick in the brain freeze or the fog of war. So you're not just in fight or flight mode or in another mode. Okay, that's Amy Cuddy. Very, very, very important one. But now let's move on to our theme of the day, taking acting classes because there's no excuse for a bad resume in today's world. There's no excuse for a mediocre or bad resume. Why? Because of AI. AI enables you to have the perfect, as close to perfect resume as possible. A resume that is tailored to the employer, not just the employer, to that employer, and not just that employer, but the job, the opening that they have. So in a matter of literally minutes, you can have your resume tailored for a job opening at a particular location, because AI will go out and find what is that location looking for, what are the jobs opens. It'll take your bio, find keywords from your bio or your history, match them to the job, and then put that in words that are not only human readable, but computer readable for keyword searches for what they're looking for. So there's no excuse to have one resume. Oh, I've got my resume. You could have a CV, which is a long document that goes through your whole history, but there's no excuse for having one resume or a mediocre or bad resume. You just won't get the job. You got to think of the resume as the ticket to the interview. That's what gets me the interview. And the interview gets me the job. And in the interview, they have to decide, do we like this person? Do we want this person? Does this person fit into our culture? Will they help us? Will they be dependable? Can we trust them? Those are all of the things that happen in the interview. That's the purpose of the interview. That is our Yuval Harari telling a story. And if people believe the story, they will cooperate with you. And the same goes true if you're holding a vigil. There's no excuse for a bad speech in today's world. There's no excuse for a bad speech. There's no excuse for a bad vigil. can easily go on to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, any one of these things and say, I'm doing a vigil for this person. What would a good 1 hour format be? And boom, it'll break it down. First do this, then do this for 10 minutes, do that, then do that. Here's what you need to do. Versus we're going to have a bunch of people show up, we're going to hand out candles, and then we're going to have a couple people give speeches and somebody who's an amateur give a prayer that is long and rambling, that hits everything in the world. There's no poignancy, there's no tears are flowing. It's more of a speech than a prayer. And then we're going to get some guys on stage singing songs that nobody knows instead of like Amazing Grace or something like that. We're going to do that, and then we're going to say thank you all for coming. And there's no vigil. There's no excuse for that now, because you can ask ChatGPT how to have the best vigil, how to have the best memorial speech, how to have a tearful prayer that's short and inclusive, how to do that. In today, well, so we're kind of at that point, right? Where people don't know you don't have to be mediocre or bad anymore. What you have to be good at is the delivery. You have to be good at the delivery. So if you're a good fighter, if you're a good guy, a coach giving a halftime speech, you're probably not going to be, you're probably going to need to practice getting people to feel empathy and compassion and tears. At a memorial, it's not a fight. Go, go, go. We're going to get them. We're not going to give up. That's not really the purpose of a vigil. The purpose of the vigil is to mourn and become better people from it. To mourn the dead and become better people, or celebrate the dead and become better people, not better fighters. Not we're going to win this thing. This is part of the infinite game. This is not the finite game. It's the infinite game. So the point is, dear person, dear students and other interested people, you gotta use ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Grok, something, Gemini. You've got to use something. Because there's no excuse. Everyone else, the people who are using it, will eat your lunch. And you know what? It's really not that hard. It's really pretty simple. Let me give you an example. So here's a prompt. Here's a prompt that I put in. In the tone of Robert Kennedy's speech after the death of Martin Luther King Jr., create a 3-minute memorial speech for Charlie Kirk. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, well, I think I'm going to put a little spin on that. Provide a quote from I said David was supposed to be an important person or somebody to start the speech. So then it went out and got a thing from David. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 30.5. And then I said, then it said, okay, here you go. And it said, would you like me to integrate that into the speech? Yeah. And then it comes out with a 3-minute speech. May God grant rest to his soul, and may God grant us the courage in our time to be peacemakers. That's the last paragraph. The first paragraph. Okay. The first one. My friends, tonight we gather in sorrow, for a young life has been taken from us. Charlie Kirk, whose voice became known to many across this nation, has passed from among us. And yet, in this moment of grief, we are called not to bitterness nor to division, but to remembrance, to reflection, and to resolve. The key to that is the delivery, not the words. It's the emotions behind the words. That's why we need to take acting classes. That's why we need to understand the impact of emotions and feelings and how to trigger the release of those in other people. Okay, well, anyway, we're way over time. The point is, in today's world, the world of today, of September 14th, 2025, there is no excuse for mediocrity in gaining information. There's no excuse for having a mediocre or bad resume. There's no excuse for not having a great resume or a great vigil or a great prayer or a great speech. There's no, there's no excuse. Okay, anyway, blessings to all. Just remember, we are colorful nuts. We're bouncing our way off the walls, moving forward in this life, in a trajectory. We have souls that will continue after we have shuffled this mortal coil, as Shakespeare said. We're going to keep going. This is just temporary. Eternity is a long ass time. Okay, with that, I will say, and cut.